Hi, and welcome to another edition of the Mediatwits number 150. I'm Mark Glaser, executive editor of PBS MediaShift. Today we'll be talking about comment sections. Many publications have been killing them off and eliminating them completely. Others have tried to moderate them and keep them civil and on topic. It's a difficult balancing act for a lot of news publishers, and it's important around engagement and trying to keep the audience engaged. Keep comments or kill them. We'll be talking about that on this week's edition of the Mediatwits. But first, a word from our sponsor. Running your own business requires focus. So does parenting. Mediatwits podcast sponsor Nextspace created a place where parents could give their best quality of attention to both co-working space and childcare space under one roof. Learn more at nextspace.us/nextkids. And I'm coming to you from Nextspace Co-working. My son is next door in Nextkids, so it is an excellent, great program. So before we get into our discussion, I want to introduce our panel. We have Bassey Etim at the New York Times, Dan Colarusso at Reuters, Dave Mosher at Popular Science, Talia Stroud at the Engaging News Project at University of Texas, and our producer, as always, Jefferson Yen in LA. So we've had a lot of different publications that decided to just eliminate comments. Reuters decided to eliminate them just on news stories. Popular Science in 2013 killed them all. Recode has eliminated comments last year, Chicago Sun-Times, and a few others. And Tablet Magazine decided they would charge for comments in order to kind of try to keep them somewhat civil. And yet the the Associated Press media editors, they did a survey of their editors and found that a lot of these newspaper and news sites still had some comments. I think it was 94% of news editors do have comments, and 82% are unlikely to eliminate them. So we have definitely a difference of opinion on what to do. Dan, you at Reuters decided to kind of take off comments from the, I'm sure it's a group, it wasn't just you, but
it was just me.
It was just you, okay. So you made the decision. Why did you decide to kill them on news stories at Reuters?
Well, just joking. Our editors have been talking about that for the better part of 6 or 7 months, and we have two types of traffic at Reuters. We have business users, kind of executive types who come through and read to get informed, and then we have a lot of search traffic, and a lot of people come to us through Google referrals. We didn't really have a huge, we have a good social presence, but we felt like we wanted to take the conversation there. The normal organic users to our site weren't engaging. It wasn't really driving. I think it was a fraction of 1% increase in, engagement on our site from the kind of comments we were getting. So we thought with the potential potholes in comments and the incivility in some cases, and in just some cases banality, we thought it would just make sense to cull them out of there, since our reporters don't have, their wire service reporters, they don't have the time to interact. And our comment, we leave it on commentary because we think that's a good place for it, and then we wanted to drive a little more social activity and social engagement. So that's where we ended up with the decision.
Yeah, and one of the arguments you make, and a lot of other people have said the same thing, is that the real commentary is happening on social media now and in other places. It's not really happening under the stories. But if that's the case, I guess why eliminate them altogether? I mean, if the commentary is happening in other places, you could still keep them there. Or, I mean, what was your decision on doing it on the blogs and opinion pieces?
Well, exactly. It went to actually the report that was done. People do like it when the authors engage. And our culture is one where we are governed by trust principles in our editorial and our news coverage. So our reporters, even if they had the time, if they weren't filing 5 and 6 updates very quickly, are kind of dissuaded from engaging and providing any opinion or any of their own views and things. So it's very difficult. It would be difficult for them to engage with commentators. Our opinion writers and our columnists aren't restricted by the same thing. So it was a very natural decision to leave them up there, and in the sense, let the community have the conversation about news stories in another place, since we couldn't do the things that typically would drive deeper engagement. And we're also a global site. I think the AP report you're talking about Local news editors and local news, I engage a lot more on my local news sites. I'm more likely to comment on ESPN New York than I am on Reuters because it's closer. The sample is smaller. The conversation is a little smaller. So it's a more engaging process. It's a more fun process.
And you talked about this research that just came out from the Engaging News Project, and Talia, you were involved with that research, and you found that, I guess, with journalists interacting with people in comment sections, that it actually helped keep things somewhat civil. I mean, what were your findings? I mean, is there some hope for ways to moderate and keep things civil to some extent?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that there's any panacea. I mean, it's not like, oh, you do this one action and all of a sudden the comment section becomes this vibrant and civil space. But I do think that there are a lot of things that we can do to improve the content and the civility in the comment section. And one of the recent research projects that we have, it's forthcoming in the Journal of Computer-Mediated Communication, we were looking at what happens when a journalist interacts in the comment section. And so we worked with a news organization that allowed us to randomize what took place in the comment section. So on some days, a reporter was getting involved in the comment section, and other days the reporter wasn't. And we were evaluating what happened to the substance of the comments when that reporter was engaged. And what we found is that when the reporter was involved in the comment section, incivility reduced by about 15%. And we also saw a significant increase in the provision of evidence by other commenters in the space. So they were providing more evidence about their claims, both of which we find to be really encouraging results from the perspective of deliberative democracy, or from the perspective of really encouraging a civil and safe space for people to share their opinions below the news.
Yeah, and you also looked a little bit into kind of automation and trying to figure out algorithms. I know there's been things out for a long time that could kind of go through automatically and eliminate, say, swear words and things like that. What did you do on the kind of automation side?
Yeah, one of our research associates on the team, Ariel Cardona, went through and looked at what's the possibility for moderation, and spent a summer playing around with different options. She tested two primarily. One was using a machine learning program and trying to teach this program on the basis of comments that we had coded in the past, what was uncivil and what wasn't. That was moderately successful, I would say, but as you're suggesting, it allows you to really easily pull out those comments that have swear words in them or something along those lines. But human language is incredibly complicated, so getting that to be a perfect solution for detecting all forms of incivility, I think, is probably not a possibility. The second thing that she tried in her analysis was, well, what if we tried to use some of these crowdsourcing platforms like Amazon.com's Mechanical Turk and try to see if we could create instructions that would allow average citizens to go in and act as moderators for the comments. And on that, we were able to get better over the course of the summer by refining the instructions that we were giving to people, but we still weren't perfect. So I think that there's possibilities here, and I'm really encouraged that we got better in terms of figuring out what instructions to give people. So I think perhaps some combination of automation and hand evaluating these comments might be a really productive move forward.
Yeah, it sounds like that. And Bassey, tell us about how the New York Times works when it comes to comments. You've always had a pretty heavily moderated, it has to go through a moderator before it gets posted at all. It's only open for certain hours. Explain to us kind of how it works now and some of the pluses and minuses of your system.
Right. So the way it works now is, you submit a comment on the Times, and it goes to our custom-built moderation interface that's really, geared toward manual moderation. So the vast majority of time, your comment is going to wait for one of the 13 other journalists on my team to approve it or reject it, or the bloggers, different. We have different setups for each section, but the vast majority of it, especially the main news items, go to our moderation team. So what we do is we work off of kind of a constitution type document, a big long file that essentially, the articles and regulations and all that. But moderating comments this way, this intensely, trying to get it, have a uniquely high quality experience, it's a really subjective thing, like a judge interpreting, the Constitution. It's like the same. Sometimes when I'm, moderating these disputes when I'm amongst my staff about what comments we provide, I feel like I'm practicing law. You get really into really arcane points. What does this word mean? What does that word mean? So it's tough, but so the drawback is, you have fewer comments overall fewer commenters. And you have fewer things open for comments for a shorter period of time. But the benefit, and I think when we talk to our readers, they always say this: the benefit is it's a unique experience on the web. Our comments are really geared toward the people reading them. We want the people reading the Times to open up the comments and feel like they're still reading the Times, not like they have to take a shower or anything else. So we're just trying to provide that. The best community. The theory being the best communities are little microcosms of the site they're on, So that's really what we try to accomplish. But we also do use a certain amount of the time automation. We Talia was just talking about machine learning. Her first example. That's a lot like the system we have right now. We call it Walternet, and we're moving to a new more advanced version of that. Which what we hope to do in the future is open up more articles for comments, have those more passively moderated by this, what's proven to be a really amazingly accurate new system based on all of our previous actions, and then really focus our moderation resources on number one, elevating our readers, the really good commenters, and making them more popular, almost like little mini celebrities, pundits on our site, and then also to focus our moderation resources just on the big Israel-Palestine, Hillary Clinton, Sarah Palin, the type of stories that you have to have manual moderation on.
Yeah, it sounds like really having a constitution for your moderation rule. It's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
Dave, does I know Popular Science, you eliminated comments a couple of years ago. I mean, what Bassey's talking about is a very scientific way to moderate comments using kind of machine learning and all that. I mean, you're pro-science, so wouldn't you try to use some kind of system like that?
I would love to have Bassey's system. Where can I get my Walternet? I mean, I think that's what it's called, right? The issue that we've encountered in the past 3 years, and the reason we ultimately decided to turn off the comments, my predecessor did, and I think wisely so, is that comments have a strong bearing of how people interpret the article, and there are an increasing number of studies to support that notion. And if you're not able to moderate those comments effectively, if you're not able to engage with your audience on the site, that can affect people's interpretation of a journalistic product, which is supposedly based on facts and finely assembled information. So we turned them off because we didn't want to risk inflaming debates such as climate change and evolution. These are the kinds of things that are theory in science, and theories are not theories in the sense that most people refer to them as. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of studies supporting these ideas. And the last thing we want to do is say, no, you can't, question science or its claims. That's what science is all about. It's about questioning the claims and information and conclusions on that information. But with a theory, it's a little different, like climate change or evolution. These are extremely robust, and they're pretty rock solid. And so we felt it was our responsibility, because we did not have the resources to properly moderate our community as Bassey has. We decided to turn it off.
What about the idea of just having comments on certain stories versus others? The way that the New York Times is kind of selective about it. I mean, would that help kind of eliminate some of those comments, or is it just you had too many? It was too overwhelming. It was too hard to kind of to wrestle them.
Yeah, I mean, I think everyone on this program can relate with the resources problem in the media industry. So that was a very, very forefront sort of problem we had in moderating the community. But we did, up until our relaunch in November 2014, have the ability to enable comments on select articles. We just never did because we were always too busy with so many other things. So it just made sense to really not use that. And frankly, as others have pointed out, can't remember if it was Talia or Dan, but that conversation has moved off websites in a big way. It's happening on Twitter. It's happening on Facebook. It's happening even on sites like Tumblr. we're active in those channels. We have people dedicated to those channels because they provide some benefit, tangible benefit to our operation. And so we can do a little bit of moderation and curation there. We'll take care of spam and sort of in civil comments. We'll on Facebook, comments that are adding to the conversation. And I bring up the business case because, we haven't really seen any detrimental effect on our traffic. The main metric that most media businesses look at with digital operations, we haven't really seen that since turning off the comments. And so when you are working up a social presence like you are on Facebook, and that is driving traffic for you, and you can have the best of both worlds, then it makes sense there.
Dan, do you agree? I mean, is it a kind of a business case? Did you go through that and decide, hey, eliminating comments is not going to really eliminate, let's say, engagement or time on page or anything like that?
Yeah, it wasn't going to hurt us engagement-wise. And what I liked about it, and what I liked about pushing the conversation to social, is that Reuters, at least in the U.S., doesn't have a huge consumer footprint, right? So we thought to ourselves, well, if we move the conversation to social, we're going to be fishing in a whole new pond, in terms of users and readers, and we can cultivate that within that conversation, and that makes it better than just driving people back to the same page to read the same trolls or read the echo chamber that we might get from a smaller sample of users or a more homogeneous sample of users on the site. So it's to us it was an extension, and we got criticized for saying that it limited our engagement on the site. But you know what? That's right at that point, our commercial business wasn't around the kind of engagement, the small fraction of engagement that we got out of it. So it really did help us push. Like we pick out 5-6 stories a day, and we've launched a Tumblr about that, about the stories that are really Reuters exclusives and things that we bring special. So we set up a separate Tumblr for that, and we've engaged. We wouldn't have done that a couple of years ago. So we're a lot more socially conscious these days than we were in the past, so it helps.
We're social media conscious, I guess.
Social media conscious. We're always socially conscious. That's right.
So Aaron Pulhofer at The Guardian kind of came out and said, it's a monumental mistake to close comments just because, news should be a conversation and so on. I mean, Talia, do you think that, this is a monumental mistake, closing the comments, or do you think, do you take Dan and Dave's point that, a lot of this has moved to social? I mean, is it a problem? Is it a speech issue if the speech is happening in another place and not on the news sites?
I think that there are reasons why some organizations may not have comments on their site, and they've been well expressed in this conversation. But I do think that there are lessons that can be learned by having interactions with readers very clearly connected to your news brand. So journalists who interact in the comment section have shared qualitatively that they benefit from that interaction because they learn more about what people are thinking and they learn more about how their journalism is being received. So can that take place in social media? Absolutely it can, but it's not on the news brand site. They're not connecting all of that back to the news brand, and so I think that there is something valuable to creating a community that people are connecting with a news brand that takes place on a site. Again, not for every news organization, but I think that there is value for some news organizations in doing that. So I think that organizations have to consider this very, very carefully before they go about turning that off, because I think you are potentially losing something. And then going back to the comments about the business outcomes, I think some sites do see increases in terms of time on site when they have comments available there that keep people coming back, and it's a new part of the site for them to engage in.
Bassey, you're nodding your head, so you are seeing a lot of engagement when you've got your kind of power users and celebrity commenters, so you do see kind of a business case there.
Right, yeah. I mean, I do think it's different for each organization. I mean, for us, I can just speak to us specifically. We're trying to get people to not just subscribe to the New York Times, but the way to do that is make them become New York Times people, So, the idea that we're trying to build on is that if you register for the New York Times, you're not just getting a news product. You're also getting a community of people who are as deeply engaged and intelligent about the news as you are, talking about things in a reasonable way. Our subscribers are all around the country. A lot of them, they don't have Facebook friends or any other social friends who are talking about things in a particularly intelligent way. And so one thing we see from a lot of our users, one thing they tell us constantly is that they love the extra breadth they get from the stories. Number one, that the fact that we'll write a story, but then they'll write the sidebar and tell us about all the the experiences they've had with that story. And also the fact that they love being part of. They want to be part of the Times, and perhaps that's a unique thing around here. But it's something that I think will really help us get more subscribers in our current model. So that's what we're going toward right now.
And do people have to be a subscriber, like a paid subscriber, to comment, or you just have to be registered, right?
Yeah, no, you just have to be registered right now. So yeah, you don't need to be a subscriber. And we always want to be careful not to give people a tag that says subscriber or anything like that. We want everybody to feel welcome, and then whenever they keep hitting their article limits, keep switching browsers on us, keep finding the articles via search, all those things. Eventually, they'll say, either this is too hard, I'll just sign up, or I like this thing so much, I want to give these guys some money, and that's a lot of what's going on with us right now, why we've been successful lately.
Yeah, it makes sense. Dave, would you consider something where people paid, if they were a subscriber, they paid a little more, maybe they could comment or have more of a voice?
Yeah, I'm frankly open and fascinated by any commenting structure that's out there, and the recent example you mentioned at the top of this program about an outlet that was requiring its users to pay if they wanted to comment. I thought that was really fascinating. Tablet magazine, that's right. I would love, and I've experienced the benefits of having comments on stories. When I was a contributor at another publication, constantly cranking out science and technology related stories, I would always check the comments because the audience was moderated, and all the trolls were constantly kicked out. It was a good community. They had done a lot of work to train that audience to know that if they misbehave, they would be given the boot. And in those comments, I found leads to stories. I found very valid corrections, pieces of information that I missed and made the story better. And as for your original question about would popular science entertain the idea of just only giving subscribers access to comments, I'm not necessarily sure that's the right way to go. The really baseline problem is if you want to do commenting responsibly, you have to have a good moderation setup. It could be part robotic, part human. It could be all manual and human powered, or maybe it could just be all robotic if those systems ever get good enough at understanding, as Talia pointed out, the nuances of human language. But right now, it still doesn't make sense to us to have any form of comment. The cons for this brand vastly outweigh the benefits. That could be subject to change in the future if new tools, advancements come online and can lower the cost and access to a quality community.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dan, what do you think? Is there a danger in kind of pushing things onto Facebook and other kind of social platforms? Do you kind of lose something, a little bit of ownership, because it seems like a lot of these platforms now are asking, hey, put your original content, post your original videos on YouTube, et cetera, and a lot of, Snapchat now has their own kind of original content. Is there a little bit of a danger that news organizations are losing ownership in a way when it goes onto social platforms?
I think I think we're losing ownership anyway. So losing ownership is that ship has sailed. But I think I think that what you said before about news being about a conversation. News isn't a conversation. News is news. The conversation is the conversation. We can come to it wide-eyed and say that news is a conversation, but news is part of the conversation. News starts a conversation, but news is news. News is these people did this thing at this time in this place, and when you're doing that, we were worried about the correction. We push out a ton of content here. We are a huge industrial news business, We were worried that when we would make mistakes, and our readers who are very good would point them out, we'd miss that. So we made sure to highlight the link. Like, if you see a problem in the story, send the email here. We have something called a Zen desk, and stuff goes there. So we were worried about that. But ownership, I think, ownership is fluid these days, and you have to find your, you talked about Times people. You have to find your tribe out there, and that tribe could be almost anywhere. So I'm not worried so much about losing the ownership. I was more worried about making the site a potentially less alienating and more easily managed experience for the people who come there.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for the discussion. I want to thank our panel, Bassey Etim at the New York Times, Dan Colarusso at Reuters, Dave Mosher at Popular Science, Talia Stroud at Engaging News Project at University of Texas, and Jefferson Yen, our producer. I want to thank Knight Foundation and PBS for making this podcast possible. And NextSpace and NextKids, you can learn about their program at nextspace.us/nextkids. We'll catch you each and every Friday on the Mediatwits. You can find us at pbs.org/MediaShift. Take care, everyone. Thanks.